Welcome to another episode of Golden Nuggets, Tips and Tales powered by Property Finder, bringing you real tools, real tactics, and real talk from the region's top real estate professionals. Stay tuned for practical, no fluff advice, because behind every great listing is an agent armed with top tips and powerful takeaways you won't want to miss. Today, I'm joined by Jack Simpson, who's the sales director at Edwards & Towers, one of the oldest agencies or brokerages in Dubai, right?
Correct. Founded in 2004.
I had Paul Christodoulou on the show once, and he was talking about how young his brokerage ORN number is. And that's how you can tell how old an agency is, by their ORN number. The lower it is, the younger. And yours is?
Ours is 193.
So you were the 193rd brokerage license issued in the history of Dubai.
Mark Towers has been around for a couple of years, but still looking very good.
Right, so we're going to talk about a topic that we haven't spoken about yet, actually, is off-plan.
Yeah.
And you've pretty much nailed that segment of the industry.
Yeah, I've had quite a lot of exposure to that market, yeah.
I heard a stat the other day where it was like there's a new launch every 17 hours or something like that.
Yeah, it's a very noisy market, and it has been over the last couple of years. It's been very profitable for the developers and
the agents.
And the agents.
So we want you to dispel some of that noise today.
Okay.
And talk to us about the strategies that are working right now for off-plan buyers versus the strategies that aren't.
Okay, well, I think we've got to differentiate firstly between off-plan, primary being a sale directly with the developer. So that's somebody that's actually purchasing directly from the developer, or whether it's an off-plan purchase where, off-plan resale, which is a purchase from a buyer to somebody who's selling that property still during construction. Both classed as off-plan in my eyes, whether it's a resale or primary. However, I believe that there's a few gems that are in the market at the moment. Throughout all that noise, you really need to work with somebody who can identify those and offer the very best to those buyers. And the only way to do that is kind of have the foresight to look into the future in terms of who you want as a customer when you are a landlord. Now, what works for me in particular is looking at several things. It's not just the developer, it's the contractor that's in place. For example, there was Emar's main contractor in Dubai Hills Estate is Aroma. It's not actually Emar doing the build themselves. Emar don't have an in-house contracting firm like Shoba or even Bengati, which is why they're so quick to build. Emar actually outsourced it to a contractor called Aroma. Now, there's some independent developers that also use Aroma, so they're still going to access the same quality and service from Aroma despite not having the brand.
So it's not just about the developer, it's also about the main contractor.
It's all about the contractor.
It's all about the contractor.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think the challenge at the moment is, or the profit in off-plan investing at the moment is purchasing something just before completion, maybe 3 to 4 months out. But that's a pretty, or can be quite a substantial cash injection from somebody, but you're looking at kind of a 15, 20% return, flipping that property into a mortgage buyer when they get the key. We've seen that consistently in some communities like Talal Al Gaf, good example. To some extent, Al Fajan, definitely Arabian Ranches 3 is just going to go through that phase next.
So you're actually saying don't buy at the launch, buy a few months before handover?
Pricing at the moment isn't necessarily very favourable to customers when you look at what's ready or available on the ready market. Okay.
Are they doing that comparison quite often? Like,
You know what? It's the convenience, I think, that's driving these buying decisions, and people knowing that they have that payment plan is the driving factor, and it's friendly, and it's not a huge upfront cash down opportunity. So they don't mind it being similar in terms of pricing because they can still access that property over several years. They'll pay it down, and they almost see it like a little savings pot.
Right.
Okay. However, that said, the the main sales tactic, so to answer your question, what's working, what's not, most people that are trying to exit the contracts that we have on our inventory at the moment have all been sold by a developer rep or a broker or an off-plan, should we say, agent, through this FOMO style of it's going to sell out tomorrow. And all of them have had the tactic of, buy this today and in 6 months you'll be able to sell it for 20% more. And we know full well as a real estate agency, because of the amount of stock we have for these off-plan resales, especially apartments, unfortunately that's misleading advice.
Right. So they're coming to you saying, the agent told me it would be...
I'm ready to take my 20% profit. And we're like, it doesn't really work like that. And the reason why it doesn't work like that is because if you're a buyer and you're effectively buying a contract, and on that contract it has a price, it's what the person paid for that unit. And you just add 20%, and all of a sudden that person's like, well, why? Why am I paying more for that contract?
Just because that original buyer was faster at the launch than I was.
They just feel like they've missed out. And if there's a launch every 17 hours, whatever the stat was, I know it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
They'll just wait for the next one. And quite rightly, I would always say to kind of address the FOMO, or just to dampen people's excitement when purchasing, is that there's 3 or 4 really good standout projects that happen every year, or have done over the last couple of years. And they're the ones that, when you have that foresight to look into the future and say, okay, who's going to be my customer? Who's going to be my tenant? Who am I going to rent it out to on a short-term basis? What are the key schooling close by? What's the commute like to key areas? What are the transport links? What's the future plans? When you assess all of that versus what else is on the market and coming up in the market, and say, I've got a unique product which is going to stand the test of time and appeal to people above maybe the tower next door, then great. We've ticked all the boxes and off you go. Great example is 1,800 units, one tower. It's massive. It's 900 one beds. That's scary. And they were all sold at like 2.1, 2.2, which is fine. It's a great tower, but that's 900 units hitting the market at the same time. And all of those landlords will be competing for a tenant that need to pay 130, 140K just for the landlord to achieve his 5% return. So that's 900 people going for that one product. So it's going to get competitive in the future, as long as you've done your true due diligence on what that tenant looks like in the long term, and then make that informed decision. You'll always do well. But it's the ones that rush in and, don't worry, you'll make 20% in 6 months. It's just like, no, it's not going to happen.
So how are you supposed to know as an agent and as a potential buyer what those 3 or 4 projects are going to be? Like, for you, what were those standout projects, either so far this year or last year?
A great one is when Expo launched. Because you've got a demographic of people working for multinational companies that are typically the higher income earners. They're mostly expats, so they come over from overseas that probably want to live in a smart city. So you've got that pent-up demand already from a high-income demographic with no residential in a smart city. So whoever bought in Expo at the very beginning is going to have a huge queue of people going, yeah, I'm ready to take one of these apartments now. And everything's there. There's no traffic there. There's parks already in place. The mall's all ready to go, run by Emaar. As we live in Dubai, we all know that Dubai Hills Estate, the mall there, Dubai Hills Mall, is the best in Dubai. I think Expos is probably going to be better because it's going to be quieter and it's still going to be run by Emaar. So when that does open, great. Conference centres there, the exhibition centre, so the World Trade Centre is closing down at DIFC, so everything's going up there. So not only from an investment standpoint, you've got that demographic of annual tenants, you've also got the business tourists in there going to the exhibition space. And if you've all been on a business trip, we know that companies foot the bill for a night's accommodation rather than the individual. So they're not as price sensitive. So that's great. Tick, tick. It's like I've got a plan A annual contract or plan B short term, but business tourists, not holiday makers, which is great.
And what are you finding are the common objections coming from off-plan buyers these days?
Before, I think everybody has got an opinion on the oversupply, and quite rightly, it is a concern now for many. A lot of people feel like they've missed the boat. They're looking at these payment plans going, it's not exactly very attractive, 80% down during construction and 20% on handover. Well, really, you could get 2 mortgaged buy-to-lets for that and have an income immediately.
Ready property, yeah.
And also not have that fight when that building hands over for a tenant. So I think people are just assessing their strategy now, where unless it's a payment plan, which is the main priority of their requirements, they're just taking a moment to pause and just assessing everything. That's not buying blindly like they were maybe 2 years ago.
And how are you addressing those concerns?
Look, I'm very transparent and honest. I know there's nearly 260,000 apartments under construction at the moment. I tell clients that. Right now, if they're looking at an apartment, unless it's in a unique community, which is going to appeal to that high income demographic, which will therefore have a direct impact on their yields, then only look at townhouses and villas. But then you're looking at $1 million minimum nowadays for something to launch. So yeah, there's different alternatives. What I'm not doing is I'm not saying buy this today and you're going to make 20% in the next 6 months, because it's just not true. So we'll always ask a client, what's their timescales to purchase? Is it immediate? Or is it, within the next 3 to 4 months? And there will be an opportunity that arises in the next 3 to 4 months. So we always say, well, just wait, and when it's the right time, we'll invest. I think it's the same for any market. If you're investing in the stock market, I think Warren Buffett said, the stock market is a transfer of money from the impatient to the patient, which is, it resonates.
It's true,
with where we're at right now in this cycle. And patience is key. So don't feel like you're going to miss out on this launch or opportunity. Working with the right agent or advisor, should we say, is key. And that agent, it doesn't have to be an off-plan agent. It just needs to be someone that has the ability to advise correctly based on your strategy and where we're currently at in this market cycle. What's an accrued? What's that? What happens at handover? How do I move money? What's this golden visa that everyone's talking about? What do you mean I don't have a solicitor that represents me for the exchange of contracts? Or it's all done on my agent. So it's scary, but if you can educate on the first call and make sure that you're providing enough value, then go into kind of the fun stuff, looking for a property. People find to have much more confidence in the person they're dealing with, and you've already built rapport and shared some knowledge. And even if they don't say, you know what, Jack, I don't want to buy now, or if they go with another agent, at least you've helped them understand the market here. Because you find when you speak to buyers, there's a lot of agents here, and everybody tells them all these different information. You don't know what's right, you don't know what's wrong. They kind of merge it all into one to make it kind of sound like what they wanted to hear. And they all of a sudden they're buying an off-plan property. They don't have to pay any tax. They're not liable. They can sell it in 6 months for 20% more. They're going to have somebody that's paying them 10% return on investment every year, tax-free and all that jazz. And it's just like, it just doesn't happen. So, you've just got to put them into a bit of a process. And for me, it's always that first one, educate. Second one, shortlist locations, really important, especially if they don't know their way around the city very much. And then third one is actually drilling down on some of these developers and projects.
That's the little 101 on off-plan from Jack Simpson. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Catch Jack's 3 other episodes. And while you're at it, why not binge the whole season?